For question number 40 of this first ACT practice test, when ABCD is reflected over the y-axis to A prime, B prime, C prime, D prime, what are the coordinates of D prime? So the key here is that we're reflecting over the y-axis. So essentially, we're going to create a mirror image of this trapezoid here, but on the other side of this line here, which is the y-axis. Now, probably the simplest way to think about this is just point by point. Let's think about what would happen to this point here at A. When it's reflected over here, it would end up somewhere around here, where if we took and reflected point B, that would end up a little bit further away from the y-axis and probably over here. The key point to recognize is that the point's distance to the y-axis on either side should be the same. So this length here from the axis to the point should be the same on either side. And these are just rough drawings, but you can see it's pretty close. And the question is now, what would the coordinate of these new points be? And if we can figure out the pattern for points A and B, then it would be simple to figure out what C and D would be without actually having to draw them. So notice with point A that it started at the point 2, 1 and then reflected over here. And what we can see is that the y-coordinate stays the same when it's reflected across the y-axis. The only difference is the x-coordinate. And since I mentioned that the point is the same distance on either side of this y-axis, and we know that from the y-axis to this point there are 2 units, it would have to be the same over here. So there would still be 2 units, it would just be in the opposite direction. Or essentially, instead of a positive 2x value, this would now be at -2. And its y value would remain at 1. So that's for point A, and for point B, it started at 3, 4, where its y value over here is not changing. We know that that's still at 4, and its x value, since it would have to remain the same distance from the y-axis, would just be the opposite of this x value. Or in other words, it would be -3. So whenever we reflect one of these points across the y-axis, the only thing that's changing is the x-coordinate, and the only difference is that it's becoming negative. So we need to know what the new coordinates for D prime would be. So when you take D and you reflect it, it would probably end up somewhere over here, but the key point for this D prime is that it's now at -12, 1. So our final answer here would be this choice letter F.